A young billionaire hears a girl in a wheelchair say, while staring at a store window, "That doll has a mom. I wish I had one too." He kneels beside her. And what he does next moves everyone to tears. Snow was slowly falling over the city, blanketing rooftops and sidewalks in white. It wasn't just any December night. The biting wind seemed to carry more than just the chill of winter. Jason Miller straightened his cashmere coat and tightened his tie as he left the gleaming skyscraper that housed his company. 15 floors above the ground, decisions that would change the destiny of thousands of people had been made. Deals closed, millions transferred. Just another normal day for a man whose empire stretched across 3 continents. "Mr. Miller, the car is waiting," said the building's security guard. "I'll walk for a bit," Jason replied, dismissing the driver with a quick gesture. The city lights created a golden contrast against the dark sky. Luxury store windows displayed their treasures to passers-by. People rushed along, laden with shopping bags, hurrying to finish their holiday preparations. Jason walked among them like a ghost, present but not belonging to that world. His thoughts wandered among calculations and strategies. The next quarter, expansion into Asia, new investors. Numbers, charts and plans spun in his mind as his steps automatically followed the familiar route back to his apartment. Then something broke the steady flow of his thoughts, a small disruption in the pattern, a dissonant note in the predictable symphony of the night. 3 stores down, a small girl in a wheelchair was completely still, facing a brightly lit window. It was an old toy store, one that stubbornly resisted the digital age, featuring rag dolls, wooden trains, and handcrafted teddy bears. Jason slowed his pace instinctively. The girl wore a coat far too thin for such a night, with visible patches on the elbows. Her dark hair was tied in a messy braid, and the wheelchair looked oversized for her frail body. There was something about her posture, a stillness, a profound loneliness, that seemed to create a vacuum in the space around her. She was alone, no adults, no supervision, just a child abandoned to her own fate in the middle of an indifferent city. Jason stopped a few feet away. Something kept him from moving on. The girl's gaze was fixed on a simple rag doll, wearing a blue dress and yarn hair. An old-fashioned doll, the kind grandmothers might sew by hand. It wasn't expensive or flashy. It wasn't electronic. It made no sounds or movements. It was just a doll. "That doll has a mom. I wish I had one too." The girl's voice was almost a sigh, a thought slipping past her lips, unbidden. Her words hung in the cold air like tiny clouds of vapor. Jason felt something strange in his chest, as if an invisible hand were squeezing his heart. It wasn't pain. It was something more unsettling, more disturbing. It was recognition. He approached quietly, like someone afraid of startling a bird. Jason knelt beside the wheelchair to be at the girl's eye level. "Do you like that doll?" he asked, his voice oddly husky. The girl turned her head, startled. Her eyes, large and dark, examined Jason with a mixture of fear and distrust. It wasn't the look of an ordinary child. It was the gaze of someone who had learned the hard way to be wary of strangers. "I do," she finally answered in a small voice. Her fingers clutched the armrest of the wheelchair. Jason looked at the store window, then back at the girl. "What if I buy it for you?" The suggestion hung between them like a strange, unexpected object. The girl frowned, as if looking for a hidden catch in that offer. "Why?" she asked simply. The question caught Jason by surprise. Why, indeed? He didn't even know how to explain. Something about that scene, the solitary child, the doll in the window, the comment about having a mom, had pierced the bubble of indifference that usually shielded him from the world. The girl kept her gaze on him, those eyes seeming to see beyond appearances. After a long moment, she nodded slightly. Jason entered the store, the bell on the door announcing his arrival. The interior was cozy and old-fashioned, with wooden shelves and the smell of cedar. An older woman with grey hair smiled at him from behind the counter. "The doll in the window, the one in the blue dress," Jason requested, pointing toward the display where the little girl waited. The shopkeeper followed his gaze and saw the child in the wheelchair. "Oh, she comes by almost every day," she said with a sad smile. "She stands out there looking at Clara." "Clara? The doll?" All of them here have names? The woman carefully took the doll from the window. They're handmade, you know, each one is unique. Jason paid without looking at the price. It didn't matter. Money had never been an issue. When he left the store, the girl was still there, as if afraid he might disappear. Jason approached and handed her the package, wrapped in colorful paper. Carefully, almost reverently, she opened it. Her fingers touched the fabric of the doll's dress, exploring every detail, every stitch. There was a moment when her lips curved into a smile so subtle it was almost imperceptible. "What's your name?" Jason asked, remaining on one knee beside her. "Lily." She hugged the doll to her chest. "And you?" Jason Miller." He hesitated, then added, "Where are your parents, Lily?" It's pretty late for a kid to be alone on the street. The small face closed up like a flower at dusk. Her eyes, which had sparkled with the joy of a new doll, became lifeless again. "My mum died. I never knew my dad. I live on my own." The words dropped between them like stones in a calm pond, sending ripples in every direction. There was no self-pity in her voice, just a simple, direct statement of unchangeable facts. Jason remained silent, holding the empty shopping bag. The cold wind seemed to have settled inside him, freezing his thoughts. Lily clutched the doll tightly, as if afraid someone might snatch it away any moment. That scene, the abandoned girl hugging a bit of fabric and stuffing as if it were her most precious possession, shook Jason deeply. He, who prided himself on his rationality and coolness in business, felt something crack inside his chest. For the first time in many years, Jason Miller's hardened heart was touched by the most unlikely encounter. A lonely child and a rag doll on a winter's night. Morning arrived with the pale light typical of winter. Jason woke up before his alarm, staring at the white ceiling of his bedroom. He hadn't slept well. Images of the previous night, the girl in the wheelchair, the rag doll, those simple, devastating words mingled with his dreams, refusing to fade in the daylight. He got up silently, trying not to wake Emily, who slept beside him. In the bathroom, he faced his reflection in the mirror while shaving. The same face as always, the same eyes, the same Jason Miller as every other day. Yet something felt different, as though something inside him had shifted overnight. "You're up early," Emily remarked, entering the kitchen as he made coffee. "I have a meeting at 8, he answered automatically, pouring a cup and handing it to her. Emily watched him over the rim of her mug. His wife had an almost uncanny ability to sense when something was off. 15 years of marriage had given her a sort of radar for Jason's moods. "Did something happen yesterday?" she asked, sitting on the high stool by the kitchen counter. Jason hesitated. How could he explain something he himself didn't fully understand? "No, nothing important," he replied, avoiding her gaze. "Just something unexpected on my way home." "Unexpected enough to keep you awake all night," Emily pressed, a small smile on her lips. Jason took a sip of coffee, stalling. "I'll catch up on sleep tonight." She didn't push further, but Jason felt her concerned gaze as he dressed for work. He kissed her forehead and left for the office, convinced that his normal workday would erase that odd sense of unease. The driver waited with the door open. Traffic was heavy. The streets were covered with a fresh layer of snow. The same people as always, rushing to their jobs. A perfectly normal day, but it wasn't. During the 8 o'clock meeting, Jason struggled to focus. While the CFO presented the last quarter's numbers, his mind drifted back to Lily's solemn face, her dark eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "Mr. Miller, any objections to the plan?" The CFO's voice brought him back to the meeting room. Everyone was staring at him, waiting. "No, go ahead," he replied, quickly composing himself. The rest of the day followed a similar pattern. Jason fulfilled his obligations like an actor following a known script, but his mind was elsewhere. By late afternoon, his assistant reminded him about a dinner with investors, and he almost cancelled. He felt oddly drained, as if he were carrying an invisible weight on his shoulders. On his way to the restaurant, he looked out the car window. The city was preparing for Christmas, colorful lights, store decorations, people carrying gifts. And somewhere in that same city, a small girl in a wheelchair was facing the cold night alone. "You can drop me here," he suddenly told the driver, pointing to the curb. "I'll walk to the restaurant." The cold air hit his face as he got out, rousing him from a torpor he hadn't even realized he was in. He walked slowly, observing the shop windows. He stopped in front of one that displayed countless dolls. Stylish dolls, expensive, all dressed in designer outfits. Nothing like the simple rag doll he had bought for Lily. That was when he realized he knew nothing about that girl besides her name. He hadn't asked where she lived, who cared for her, how she ended up in that situation. He'd left her there, on the cold sidewalk, with just a doll as consolation for a life of abandonment. The dinner was a disaster. Jason fumbled his answers, lost the thread of conversations, and when one of the investors asked about his vision for the next 5 years, he found himself completely at a loss for words. He couldn't think about the future of his corporation when his mind was stuck on the image of a lone child in the present. He returned home late, hoping Emily would be asleep. But she was waiting in the living room with a book on her lap and a worried expression. "How was dinner?" she asked, closing the book. "It was productive," he lied, loosening his tie. "Jason," Emily said, standing and approaching him, "I've known you for almost 20 years. I know when something's wrong." The sincerity in her eyes broke something inside him. Jason sank onto the sofa, running his hands over his face. "I found a kid yesterday," he finally confessed. "A girl in a wheelchair, alone outside a toy store." He told Emily the whole story, the store window, the rag doll, the comment about wanting a mom, the shocking revelation that Lily lived by herself. As he spoke, he felt the weight of it shifting off his shoulders, as if sharing it made everything more real and at the same time less suffocating. Emily listened in silence, her eyes filling with tears. "And you left her there?" she asked when he finished. The question felt like a punch to the gut. "What else could I do? I'm not a social worker. I don't know anything about kids. You could have called someone, the police, social services." "I didn't think of that at the time," Jason admitted, suddenly feeling guilty. "It was all so strange." Emily sat beside him, taking his hand. "What's really bothering you, Jason?" The question hung between them, demanding a level of honesty he rarely allowed himself. Jason looked at his hands, struggling to express thoughts he'd never voiced before. "When she said she had no mum, that she lived alone," his voice faltered. "Something inside me recognized that feeling." Emily squeezed his hand, encouraging him to continue. "All my life I've built things, buildings, companies, fortunes. But what do I really have? An empty apartment during the day, meetings with people who only want something from me. We have no kids, I have no real friends. I have you, and I'm grateful for that. But there's an emptiness," Emily finished softly. "Yes," he admitted, feeling a strange relief at finally saying it out loud. "An emptiness I never realized until I saw that girl hugging a simple rag doll like it was the most precious thing in the world." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was contemplative, as though they were observing a truth they had long ignored. "What do you want to do?" Emily asked eventually. Jason shook his head. "I don't know. I feel like I should have done more. I should do something now, but I don't know what." Emily cupped his face in her hands, making him look into her eyes. "Then we'll figure it out together." That night, lying in bed beside a sleeping Emily, Jason stared into the darkness. The apartment's silence echoed with a question he'd never asked before. What was the point of everything he'd built, if, in the end, it didn't fill the emptiness inside him? The image of Lily hugging her doll came back to him. Such a simple, insignificant object, yet it brought so much joy to a child who had nothing. Maybe true poverty wasn't the lack of possessions, but the absence of connections that give life meaning. Jason closed his eyes, determined to find Lily again, not just for her sake, but for his own. 3 days passed like a blurry haze in Jason's life. Meetings, phone calls, emails, all felt distant, as though he were observing his own life through fogged glass. Thoughts of Lily never left him. On the contrary, with each passing hour, His certainty grew that he needed to find her again. On the morning of the third day, Jason made a decision. "I'm taking the day off," he announced at breakfast, surprising Emily so much she spilled a bit of her coffee. "You, a weekday off?" She studied him with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "Is the world ending and nobody told me?" Jason smiled faintly, acknowledging how unusual that was. In 15 years of marriage, he'd never taken a personal day off without a clear reason. "I have something personal to take care of," he explained, not giving details. Emily nodded, not pressing for more information. There had been a quiet understanding between them since the night he confessed everything. Jason dismissed his driver and took his own car, a sports model he rarely used. The city looked different from the driver's seat, closer, more real. He parked a few blocks from the toy store and walked the rest of the way, retracing the steps of that night. The commercial street looked different in daylight, busier, noisier, more alive. The toy store, with its old facade and lovingly arranged display, seemed like a portal to another time. Jason stopped in front of it, scanning the spot where Lily had been 3 nights before. There was no sign of the child. He walked inside the store, the bell chiming just as before. The same grey-haired lady stood behind the counter, arranging small tin soldiers. "Good morning," she greeted, recognizing him immediately. "Back for another doll?" "Actually, I'm looking for the girl," Jason replied. "The one in the wheelchair, Lily." The woman's sad smile deepened. "Ah, yes, she comes around sometimes. But I haven't seen her for a few days." Does anyone take care of her, any family?" The woman frowned. "Not that I know of. I've tried talking to her a few times, but she's a reserved little thing. I know she stays around here on the streets. Some shopkeepers give her food. On very cold days, the baker on the corner lets her sit in the back of his shop." She paused, looking Jason over. "Why do you ask?" Jason hesitated. It was a good question. Why was he there? Looking for a child he didn't know, instead of running his empire from his office. "I want to help her," he said simply. The lady studied his face for a moment, gauging his sincerity. Then she nodded. "If you find her, tell her Mrs. Margaret says hello, and let her know I have a new hat for Clara." Jason thanked her and left. Standing on the sidewalk, he looked around, suddenly feeling lost. The city was huge. How do you find a small child who could be anywhere? He started by walking slowly along the commercial street, checking every corner and alley. After an hour, he stopped at a coffee shop where the barista shook his head when asked about Lily. In the restaurant next door, the waiter said he'd seen her occasionally near the central square. At a newsstand, the vendor recalled seeing her ask for spare change by the subway station. Every lead was a loose thread that led nowhere concrete. Jason kept searching, going into shops, questioning street vendors, showing a picture he'd discreetly taken with his phone. A low-resolution image, but enough to identify her. Noon came and went. Afternoon wore on. Jason was hungry and thirsty, but didn't stop. Something inside him, an urgency he couldn't explain, compelled him to continue. It was only when the sun began to set, painting the sky orange, that he got his first real clue. A man selling roasted chestnuts pointed him toward a narrow side street near the park. The girl in the wheelchair. Yeah, she usually stays back there, near the dumpsters behind the Italian restaurant. They leave food for her sometimes. Jason thanked him and headed in that direction. The alleyway was dark and narrow, smelling of food and garbage. Large metal dumpsters lined one wall, and behind them, piles of empty boxes formed little mounds. Then he saw it, a subtle movement among the boxes, a metallic glint that could be a wheelchair. "Lily," he called, approaching slowly. Silence. Then the soft sound of something being dragged. "Lily, it's me, Jason. Remember me from the toy store?" A small head emerged from behind the boxes, dark eyes watching him warily. Lily was wrapped in several blankets, even though the day wasn't as cold as before. Her wheelchair stood nearby, partially covered by a piece of tarp. And in her hand, held close to her chest, was the doll, Clara. "You came back," she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and guarded hope. "I did," Jason confirmed, stepping closer but still giving her space. "I've been looking for you all day." "Why?" That same direct question as before. Jason hesitated. The truth was he couldn't fully explain it himself. "I was worried," he finally said. "I wanted to know if you're okay." Lily studied him with those eyes that seemed far older than her small frame. "I'm fine," she replied, but a tremor in her lips betrayed the cold she felt. Jason glanced around. Her makeshift shelter was disheartening. A few cardboard boxes served as protection from the wind, a torn tarp partly covering the wheelchair, thin blankets wholly inadequate for the coming winter, a battered backpack that likely contained all her belongings. "Are you hungry?" he asked, heart constricting at the sight. Lily hesitated, then nodded slightly. "There's a place nearby that serves the best sandwiches in town," Jason said, trying to smile reassuringly. "Would you like to go with me?" Again, that evaluating look. After a moment that felt like an eternity, Lily nodded. "I need help with the chair," she said, pointing to where it was partially hidden. Jason pulled off the tarp and righted the chair, noticing how old and rickety it was. Gently, he helped Lily into it, aware of how easily she moved despite her limitations. Clara remained in her lap the whole time. Pushing the wheelchair over the uneven sidewalk, Jason felt a strange sense of peace. The burden that had weighed on him these past days felt lighter now. He didn't know what he'd do next, what finding Lily would truly entail, with what responsibilities might arise. But in that moment, all that mattered was that he had found her. The cafe was small and welcoming, with wooden tables and the comforting aroma of fresh bread. The waiter, a friendly young man, didn't seem surprised to see Jason pushing a small child in a wheelchair. He led them to a corner table near a heater. "What would you like?" Jason asked once they were settled. Lily studied the menu with wide eyes, clearly impressed by the options. "Can I pick anything?" "Anything," Jason assured her. She ordered a grilled cheese sandwich, hot chocolate and a slice of apple pie. Jason smiled as he gave her order, noting her typical kid's choices despite all she'd been through. While they waited, an awkward silence hung between them. Jason wasn't sure how to start. What do you say to a child you found living on the streets? Lily, for her part, didn't seem inclined to talk, observing the cafe with curiosity, still clutching her doll. "Mrs. Margaret at the toy store sends her regards," Jason offered at last. "She said she has a new hat for Clara." Lily's face lit up at the mention of the shopkeeper and the doll. "She's nice. Sometimes she lets me stay in the store when it's really cold outside." "You like Clara?" Jason asked, motioning to the doll. Lily nodded, looking at the toy fondly. "She's my friend now. We talk a lot when I'm alone." There was something deeply moving about that simple statement. Jason felt a lump in his throat. The waiter brought their meals, and Lily's eyes sparkled at the sight of food. She started eating slowly, savoring each bite as though it were a completely new experience. Jason watched, trying not to show how much it affected him. How did you end up alone, Lily?" he finally asked, once she was halfway through her sandwich. The child paused, setting the sandwich down. Her face took on a serious expression. "My mom got sick," she began, her voice small but steady. "It was just the two of us. She always said we were us against the world." A sad smile flickered on her lips. "When she died, I stayed with a neighbor for a while, but the neighbor didn't really want a child, especially one like me." "Like you?" Jason frowned. Lily gestured toward her legs. "It was a car accident. I survived, but my legs no longer work." Jason felt his heart tighten. "Were there no other relatives?" "My mom didn't have any family," Lily replied simply. The starkness of that statement left Jason speechless. A child alone in the world, choosing the harshness of the streets over staying somewhere she wasn't truly wanted. "So you live on the streets all the time?" Lily shrugged, picking up her sandwich again. "It's not as bad as it seems. There are nice people. The baker gives me bread at the end of the day. Mrs. Margaret lets me stay in the store when she doesn't have customers. The newsstand guy gives me a blanket in winter." She paused, sipping her hot chocolate. "And now I have Clara. And you showed up." The way she spoke, with such maturity and acceptance of her situation, was both admirable and heartbreaking. Jason looked at this small child, so fragile and yet so strong, and felt something break inside him. Beneath his carefully cultivated image of an unyielding businessman lay a heart that was now bleeding for Lily's story. "How do you manage to be so strong?" he asked, the words escaping before he could stop them. Lily looked at him with those ancient eyes in a young face. "I have no choice," she said simply. "My mum said crying doesn't help. You have to keep going." Jason nodded, unable to speak. For the first time in his adult life, he felt like crying. Not for himself, not for some personal loss, but for this child who faced life with a courage many adults lacked. They finished their meal in a comfortable silence. Lily ate every crumb of her pie, and Jason asked for 2 more sandwiches to go. By the time they left, one question hung between them, unspoken but present. Now what? Jason couldn't just let her go back to that precarious shelter among the boxes. He couldn't pretend he didn't know about her situation. Not after hearing her story, after seeing how she braved hardships that would break many people. "It's getting late," Jason noted, glancing at the darkening sky through the cafe window. "I can take you back to where you were staying." The question sounded odd even to him. Taking a child back to an alley among boxes felt wrong on every level. Lily sensed his hesitation. "You don't need to worry about me, I can handle myself." There was pride in her voice, a forced independence no child should have to develop. "I have extra sandwiches," she continued, pointing to the bag on the table. "And Clara keeps me company." Jason nodded, unable to argue, but feeling completely helpless. How could he just leave her to return to the streets? On the other hand, what more could he do at that moment? As he paid the bill and helped Lily back to her wheelchair, Jason realized something important. For the first time in a very long time, his actions weren't motivated by money, power, or status. They were driven by something much simpler, yet much deeper: empathy. The ability to feel someone else's pain and want to ease it. A feeling he had forgotten he possessed, buried under years of ruthless negotiations and cold decisions. Jason accompanied Lily back to the alley where he had found her. The goodbye was brief and awkward. She insisted she would be fine. He promised to come back the next day with more food and warmer blankets. Watching the small, brave figure with her rag doll, once again wrapped in threadbare blankets among boxes, Jason understood that she had unknowingly given him an invaluable gift: the rediscovery of his own humanity. Jason drove home in silence. The image of Lily, huddled in thin blankets, hidden among cardboard boxes, with only a rag doll for company, haunted him. The contrast between that reality and his own life of comfort and privilege was stark, almost obscene. The sun had fully set by the time he parked in the underground garage of his luxurious building. Unlike every other night, Jason felt no relief in arriving home. On the contrary, each step toward his private elevator felt weighted by a new burden: conscience. The apartment occupied the entire top floor of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the sparkling city. On another occasion, Jason would have admired it, silent testimony to his success. But tonight, he could only see the city's lights as distant, cold stars shining indifferently above a small child suffering. Emily was in the living room, reading under a soft lamp. When she saw him, she smiled and closed her book. "You disappeared all day," she commented without accusation. "I was worried." Jason set his keys on the table and sat heavily on the sofa beside her. His body felt tired from the search, but his mind had no rest. "I found the girl," he said without preamble. Emily straightened up, fully attentive. "The child you mentioned, Lily?" Jason nodded, running his hand over his face as if to gather his thoughts. "I spent the whole day looking for her. I went to the toy store. I asked shopkeepers. I searched streets and alleys." "And how is she?" Emily's voice brimmed with genuine concern. "She lives on the streets. Literally. I found her hiding behind dumpsters, wrapped in blankets, using cardboard as shelter." Jason paused, his throat tight. "She still had the doll I bought, holding onto it like it was her most precious belonging." Emily put her hand to her mouth, tears filling her eyes. "My God, Jason, a little child, alone on the streets." "I took her to eat at a cafe," he continued. "She told me her story. Her mother died. She never knew her father. She stayed with a neighbor for a while, but then ended up alone. What about authorities, social services? She ran away, said she'd rather be alone than with people who don't truly want her. Jason looked at Emily, his voice dropping. She was in an accident that killed her mother. She survived, but her legs don't work. She's in a wheelchair. A heavy silence followed. Emily wiped away a tear rolling down her cheek. Where is she now? I left her where I found her. Jason avoided her gaze, feeling suddenly ashamed. She insisted she'd be fine. She's used to it. She said some store owners help her with food or shelter when it's too cold. Emily stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city glowed under the clear night sky. But somewhere among those countless lights, one small child faced the darkness alone. We can't leave her there, Jason, she finally said, her voice firm despite the tears. Jason watched his wife. Emily had always wanted children. In their early years of marriage, they had tried, but with no success. The treatments were painful, the monthly disappointments even more so. Eventually, they stopped trying. Jason buried himself in work, building his empire. Emily went back to school, devoting herself to charity work. Life went on, and the subject of children became a silence between them. Not exactly a taboo, but a hope abandoned by mutual agreement. Now, seeing her there in the glow of the city lights, Jason realized that hope had never truly died. It had only lain dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. "What do you want to do?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Emily turned to him, her expression a mix of determination and pleading. "Let's go get her. Now, tonight." "Now?" Jason glanced at the clock. It was past 9. "You said she's sleeping in boxes, Jason. In boxes." Emily's voice trembled with emotion. "While we have 3 unused guest rooms in this apartment," Jason considered it. The rational side of his mind, the pragmatic businessman, began listing complications. Legal issues, necessary adaptations, time commitments, long-term implications. But something stronger spoke within him now, something that had stirred from the moment he heard Lily's quiet voice whisper about a doll's mother. "Let's go," he agreed, standing. "We have extra blankets in the hall closet. I'll get them." Emily ran to him, throwing her arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. While Emily gathered clean clothes, towels, and quickly prepared one of the guest rooms, Jason filled a basket with fruit, water, and snacks. Practical tasks that helped quell the growing anxiety within him. What they were doing was completely out of the ordinary, impulsive, potentially complicated, and yet it felt absolutely right. 20 minutes later, they were in the car, driving in silence through the city streets. Emily clutched the basket on her lap, biting her lip nervously. Jason tried to remember exactly how he had gone earlier that day. At night, the city looked different, landmarks less clear. "What if she's not there?" Emily asked suddenly. The same worry had crossed Jason's mind. "Then we'll look for her, and if we don't find her tonight, we'll come back tomorrow, and the next day, until we find her." Emily nodded, gripping the handle of the basket tighter. Thankfully, it was easier than they feared. The alley was quiet at that hour. Nearby restaurants were already closed. Jason parked and led Emily to the spot between the dumpsters where he had seen Lily. His heart pounded as they approached, afraid the makeshift shelter might be empty. But she was there, curled up behind the boxes, more hidden than before. Just a small mound of blankets that might go unnoticed by someone not looking carefully. Jason approached slowly, making enough noise to announce his presence without startling her. "Lily," he called softly. "It's me, Jason. I came back, like I promised." There was a moment of silence, then a rustling sound. Lily's small head emerged from under the blankets, her dark eyes wide with surprise in the darkness. "You really came back," she said, her voice equal parts disbelief and cautious hope. "I brought someone with me," Jason replied, indicating Emily, who stepped forward. "This is my wife and Emily." Emily knelt to Lily's level, her face gentle, though Jason could see the effort it took to hold back her emotion. "Hi, Lily," she said softly. "Jason told me about you and about your doll." Clara, right? Lily nodded shyly, showing the doll she had pressed against her chest. We brought you some food, Emily went on, opening the basket. And warmer blankets. Lily looked from the basket to the blankets, her eyes widening at such unexpected generosity. But, Emily continued, her voice kind yet firm, we'd like to offer you something more, if you'll accept. Jason knelt beside Emily, feeling a nervousness he'd never experienced even in the biggest deals of his career. We want to invite you to stay with us, Lily. In our home, we have an extra room, a comfortable bed, hot water. For how long? Lily asked, distrust evident in her voice. For tonight, at least, Jason answered honestly. Then we can talk more. See what works best for everyone. Lily looked between them, her dark eyes assessing, calculating, weighing risks in a way no child should have to. Why are you doing this? She finally asked. Emily glanced at Jason before answering. Because no one should sleep on the street, Lily. Especially not a child like you. It's not pity, Jason added, noticing the resistance in her eyes. It's the right thing to do. Again, silence. Jason could almost see the thoughts racing behind those serious eyes. At last, Lily spoke. Can I bring Clara? Of course, Emily replied with a genuine smile. Clara is more than welcome. And my backpack? It has important stuff in it. Anything you want, Jason promised. Lily hesitated one more moment, then nodded. Just for tonight, she echoed Jason's terms. There was something both extraordinary and tragic about seeing such a small child making such a serious decision with so much maturity. Jason helped Lily into her wheelchair, while Emily gathered her worn backpack and the few belongings the girl indicated. It was so little, an entire life fitting into one small bag. The drive back was silent. Lily sat in the back seat, gazing out the window with fascination as they drove into the more affluent parts of town. She looked both amazed and wary, as if at any moment she might discover it was all a dream or, worse, a trap. When they arrived at the building, the doorman looked surprised to see a child in a wheelchair, but was discreet enough not to ask questions. In the private elevator that opened directly into the apartment, Lily clutched Clara tighter. It's really high, she commented, watching the numbers light up on the panel. The apartment takes up the entire top floor, Jason explained, realizing too late how that might sound to a child who had been living in cardboard boxes. When the elevator doors opened into the spacious living area, the contrast between these worlds became even clearer. Lily looked around, her eyes wide, taking in the vast space and the elegant furniture, the art on the walls. Your home is bigger than the whole cafe, she remarked, her small voice echoing in the immense room. Emily smiled, gently touching the girl's shoulder. Let's show you your room, you must be tired. They guided Lily down the hall to one of the guest rooms. Emily had worked quickly before they left. The bed was made with fresh sheets, a soft lamp glowed on the bedside table, and towels were folded on a chair. That's the bathroom. Emily pointed to a door connected to the room. There's hot water and fresh soap. Hot water, Lily repeated, as if it were a foreign concept. You're probably hungry, Jason said, trying to fill the awkward silence. We can make you something, a sandwich maybe, or some pasta? Lily shook her head. I still have the sandwiches you gave me in my backpack. Jason's heart squeezed at the thought that she had saved them, likely rationing her food as she had learned to do on the streets. Would you like to take a bath first? Emily suggested gently. Then we can eat together in the kitchen. Lily nodded, still clutching the doll. Do you need help with your bath? Asked Emily. I can do it myself, Lily answered firmly. I always manage. Emily showed her how to operate the shower, placed towels within reach and explained where everything was. Then she and Jason left the room, respecting Lily's request for privacy. In the hallway, away from Lily's hearing, Emily hugged Jason tightly. I can't believe what she's been through, she whispered, her voice catching. A child. Jason. A child. Jason returned the embrace, feeling the same mix of pain and outrage. Everything is happening so fast. We didn't plan this. We don't know what comes next. Emily pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. It doesn't matter, we're doing the right thing. We'll figure out the rest together." In the kitchen, as they prepared a simple meal, Jason watched Emily move with renewed energy. There was purpose in her actions, a quiet joy in her eyes he hadn't seen in a long time. The usually quiet, formal apartment felt different, alive. When Lily appeared at the kitchen door, the change was remarkable. Clean, her dark hair still damp, wearing an oversized t-shirt of Emily's as a nightgown, she looked like a different child, younger, more vulnerable. "I finished my bath," she announced, a hint of pride in her voice. "That's great," Emily said with a warm smile. "We're just about done getting dinner ready." Lily looked around the modern kitchen with its stainless steel appliances and marble countertops. "Can I stay here and watch?" "Of course," Jason replied, pulling up a tall stool so she could transfer out of her wheelchair if she wished. "Want to help? You could slice these tomatoes." The girl looked at him in surprise, then nodded shyly. Carefully, Jason set up a cutting board and a small table knife for her, showing her how to hold it safely. Her small hands worked with surprising skill. "My mom taught me to cook," she explained, noticing Jason's admiring look. "She said it was important for me to do things on my own." During the simple dinner, pasta with fresh tomato sauce and grated cheese, Lily ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a rare treat. Emily and Jason exchanged glances across the table, both aware of how extraordinary this moment was. "Did you like the food?" Emily asked when Lily finally set down her fork. The girl nodded. "It's the best meal I've ever had." After dinner, Jason noticed Lily struggling to keep her eyes open. The day had been long and emotionally exhausting for all of them. "I think it's bedtime," he suggested gently. Emily helped Lily back to the guest room while Jason tidied the kitchen. When he finished, he went to the room and found the door slightly ajar. Emily was on the edge of the bed, tucking the blankets around Lily, who was already asleep. Clara, the doll, was tucked tightly in her arms. Jason paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. There was something so natural and yet so fragile in that moment. Emily noticed his presence and rose quietly, joining him at the door. "She fell asleep the instant her head hit the pillow," Emily whispered. "She must be exhausted." Together, they looked at the small figure in the big bed, in sleep. All of Lily's defenses were gone. She was just a little girl, vulnerable and needing protection. Jason tried to move closer, though he wasn't exactly sure how. He adjusted the blanket, lightly touching Lily's shoulder. The gesture was clumsy, uncertain, but filled with an emotion he was only beginning to understand. Emily laced her fingers through his, and together they left the room, leaving the door ajar and a gentle light on in the hall. Neither of them knew what morning would bring, what the next steps would be, how to navigate the complexities sure to follow. But that night, for the first time in a long while, their home truly felt like home. The soft morning light filtered through the curtains when Lily opened her eyes. For a moment, she felt completely disoriented. The smooth, white ceiling above her wasn't the grey sky or the peeling paint of some temporary shelter. The soft bed beneath her wasn't made of cardboard boxes or the hard ground of the streets. The silence wasn't broken by the city's morning clamour. Everything was different, quiet, safe. Then the memories of the previous night returned. Jason and Emily, the invitation, the huge apartment, dinner in the gleaming kitchen. Lily squeezed Clara against her chest, seeking the familiar comfort of the doll as she tried to process where she was and what might happen next. She had learned the hard way that good moments rarely lasted. A gentle knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Lily, are you awake?" Emily's voice called from the other side. "Yes," Lily replied, her own voice sounding small in the spacious room. Emily came in carrying a tray with a glass of orange juice and toast with jam. Her smile was warm, but Lily noticed something different in her eyes, a quiet excitement, as if she were holding on to a happy secret. "Did you sleep well?" Emily asked, setting the tray on the bedside table. Lily nodded. "The bed is really soft." "Is that good or bad?" Emily teased, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Different," Lily admitted, "but good. It's warm." Emily watched as Lily took a few careful sips of juice. There was something in the way the girl held the glass, so gently, as if it were a precious treasure that tugged at her heart. Jason left early. Emily explained. He had some important meetings, but he said he'll be back for lunch. She paused as though gathering her thoughts. In the meantime, I was thinking we could do something special. Lily looked at her curiously. What? A surprise, Emily replied with a smile. But first, how about a nice warm bath? You managed on your own yesterday, but today I could help you, if that's okay. Lily hesitated. She was used to doing everything herself, to relying solely on her own strength. Accepting help meant letting her guard down, trusting, two things that were hard for someone who had learned that the world could be cruel and unpredictable. But there was something about Emily, a genuine kindness, an absence of pity or condescension that made Lily want to trust. Okay, Lily finally agreed. The bathroom was spacious, with a large tub that Emily filled with warm water. Lily stared at it with wide eyes. I've never seen a tub this big, she whispered, running her hand over the porcelain edge as if it were made of gold. It's all for me. Emily smiled gently. Yes, all for you. The water's just right. Lily touched the gleaming faucets, turning them slightly with a look of wonder. Hot water whenever you want, she murmured, almost to herself. No need to wait or heat it on the stove. Carefully, Emily helped Lily out of the oversized t-shirt and into the bath. Her movements were respectful, giving Lily time and space, never rushing or forcing. Lily gradually relaxed in the warm water, letting out a contented sigh. Her fingers wrinkled after a while, but she didn't want to leave. Emily washed her dark hair with a fruity shampoo Lily had never smelled before. It smells so good, Lily said, inhaling deeply. Like a whole orchard. The gentle fingers massaging her scalp brought back a feeling she had almost forgotten, the caring touch of someone who truly cares. My mum used to do this, Lily said softly, eyes closed as Emily rinsed the suds away. When I was little, Emily felt a lump in her throat but kept her voice steady. She must have been a wonderful mother. She was, Lily confirmed. The best. After the bath, wrapped in a large, fluffy towel, Lily couldn't stop touching the fabric. It's like a cloud hugging me, she remarked, rubbing her face in it. I've never used a towel like this. Emily smiled while she helped Lily apply lotion and comb her still damp hair. There was an intimacy in that routine, a quiet bond forming between them. Emily brought in clean clothes, a set she had bought in a rush the night before at a 24-hour store down the street. Simple jeans, a light blue t-shirt, and a grey hoodie. They were new in Lily's size, and just for her. Are these for me? Lily asked, running her fingers over the soft t-shirt as though it were a precious jewel. Brand new. I've never had clothes like this. Of course, Emily replied with a grin. We can't have you walking around in my giant t-shirts forever. Dressed in her new outfit, her damp hair neatly brushed into a simple braid, Lily looked different, more like a regular child, less like a street survivor. Ready for your surprise? Emily asked. Curiosity won out over caution, and Lily nodded. Emily pushed her wheelchair down the hall, past the guest room Lily had slept in, toward a door at the end that had been closed the day before. Close your eyes, Emily instructed. Lily obeyed, feeling the chair move forward and hearing the door open. The light changed against her eyelids, brighter, warmer. You can open them now. Lily opened her eyes and gasped. The room Emily had brought her into was unlike anything she'd seen before. The walls were painted a soft, sunny yellow. A larger bed than the guest rooms stood against one wall, covered with a sky blue comforter and at least 6 pillows of different sizes. Colorful books filled shelves on one wall. A small wooden chest sat open, revealing toys inside. There was a desk with art supplies, a cozy armchair by a wide window, a plush rug on the floor. It's like a princess's bedroom, Lily whispered, her eyes roaming over every detail. Her hands clutched the wheelchair arms as if she might be swept away by the emotion. I've never seen anything like this, not even in library books. But what really caught Lily's attention was a new rag doll on the bed, similar to Clara, but in a different dress and lighter hair. This, Emily said softly, could be your room. If you want it, of course. Lily stared at the bright space, then at Emily, a mix of confusion and tentative hope in her eyes. How do you want me to stay? For now, Emily answered honestly. We're still figuring out the details, the legal aspects. But yes, Jason and I would really like you to stay with us. Lily took in those words with a gravity beyond her years, thinking carefully about what they meant. What if, she began, hesitant, what if you change your minds? The question took Emily by surprise, not because Lily doubted them, but because of the painful maturity it revealed. That's a fair concern, Emily acknowledged, lowering herself to meet Lily's gaze. I can't promise everything will be perfect, that there won't be problems or tough times, but I can promise we won't make decisions about you without talking openly and honestly with you. Lily considered that, her dark eyes intense. The doll, she finally said, pointing to the bed. Is that for me too? Yes, Emily smiled. I figured Clara might want a friend. What's her name? That's up to you, you get to choose. Lily asked to be taken to the bed. Emily helped her transfer from the wheelchair, and the girl picked up the new doll, examining it carefully. Then she looked around the sunny room once more, taking it all in. It's very beautiful, she whispered at last. I'm so glad you like it, Emily replied. How about we go down to the kitchen now? We can have hot chocolate and cookies while we wait for Jason to come home for lunch. In the large, bright kitchen, Lily watched everything with fascination. The huge refrigerator, the gleaming appliances, the cabinets full of food. When Emily started preparing hot chocolate, Lily followed each step intently. It's like you have a whole store in your house, she commented, seeing Emily open a cabinet filled with supplies. Emily smiled as she stirred milk with cinnamon and poured it into colorful mugs. The sweet, comforting smell filled the air. A plate of chocolate chip cookies was placed on the table, and Emily sat beside Lily. Can I eat as many as I want? Lily asked timidly, eyeing the cookies as though they were a mirage. Of course, Emily said, but don't overdo it, or you'll get a stomachache. Between sips of hot chocolate and bites of soft cookies, a slow conversation began to unfold. Emily talked about her childhood, about how she met Jason, about her work in the arts and her charity projects. Lily, initially reserved, started sharing small glimpses of her own history, memories of her mother, a trip to the zoo they once took, how she learned to read early on. It was a delicate dance, this mutual discovery. It would have been all too easy to overwhelm Lily with too many questions or expectations. Emily matched her pace, respecting her silences, celebrating her small revelations. When they finished the hot chocolate and cookies, Lily looked at Emily with a serious expression. If I stay, she said carefully, can I call the yellow room mine? Of course, Emily replied, her heart filling with hope. And the new doll, Lily went on, I think I'll call her Hope. Emily felt tears threatening, but held them back. That's a beautiful name. Outside, the city continued its restless pace, people rushing to appointments, cars honking, life rolling on inexorably. But in that sunny kitchen, something new and delicate was beginning to blossom. Lily, who had guarded herself for so long against disappointment and abandonment, allowed herself very cautiously a small space to dream. Not of grand castles or fairy tale endings, but of something far more precious and rare in her experience. A family, a place to belong, a yellow room to call her own. Days began to form a predictable sequence, like beads on a necklace. For Lily, who had spent so much time coping with the constant uncertainty of the streets, this predictability was like a warm blanket on a cold day, comforting, safe, almost unreal. Mornings in Jason and Emily's home followed a pattern that quickly became familiar. Jason woke first, dressing silently so as not to disturb Emily. He went downstairs to the kitchen and made coffee, while the sun was just beginning to rise over the skyline. During this brief interval between night and day, Lily, still accustomed to waking early from her street life, would also get up. Their first early morning meeting happened by chance, 3 days after Lily's arrival. She had awakened before dawn, as she always did on the streets, safer to move when the city still slept. Quietly, she wheeled herself to the kitchen and surprised Jason, who had his back turned to the door. "Good morning," she said timidly. Jason turned around, half a cup of coffee in his hand. "Good morning," he replied, looking slightly awkward. "You're up early?" Lily nodded. "I always get up early." A silence settled between them, not exactly uncomfortable, but charged with hesitation. Jason offered her a glass of milk, which she accepted with a whispered, "Thank you, sir." They sat at the kitchen table, Jason with his coffee, Lily with her milk. Through the window, they watched the sky shift color as the city's first lights flickered on in distant buildings. They didn't talk much, making only occasional remarks about the weather, about the beautiful sunrise, about the birds that sometimes perched on the ledge. The next day, Lily again woke early and joined Jason in the kitchen. This time, he had a special mug set aside for her, one with stars that glowed in the dark. Once more, they shared the hush of dawn. On the third day, Jason asked if she wanted to try toast with strawberry jam. Lily accepted, her eyes lighting up as she tasted the sweetness. On the fourth day, he brought a book and read a few pages while they drank their milk and coffee, respectively. And so, without either planning or discussing it, they developed a morning ritual. A ritual just for the two of them, in that liminal space between night and day, while the rest of the world still slept. "Do you always wake up this early, sir?" Lily asked one of those mornings, curious about the habits of the man who had taken her in. "Jason," he corrected gently. "You can just call me Jason." Lily lowered her gaze, fiddling with the edge of her mug. "Sorry, Sir Jason." He smiled, realizing that formality was part of her protective shell, a way to keep a safe distance. "Yes, I do. I like the quiet of morning. It's when I can think best." "Me too," Lily agreed, surprising herself at the similarity. "It's the safest time on the streets." Jason felt a pang at that, but kept his voice neutral. "And here, do you feel safe in the mornings as well?" Lily pondered. "It's different here. It's safe all the time. But morning is special." Jason nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. As days passed, other small rituals merged with their morning routine. In late afternoons, when Jason returned from work, he and Lily spent time in the building's garden, a well-kept green space with flower beds, wooden benches, and a small fountain. Lily loved the running water, the gentle, constant murmur it made as it fell. "It sounds like music," she observed once, closing her eyes to listen more intently. In response, Jason took out his phone, tapped a few times, and played Vivaldi. The notes of spring drifted through the air, mingling with the fountain's splashes. Lily opened her eyes, enthralled. "It's like the water is singing," Jason smiled, captivated by her genuine wonder. "That's Vivaldi, a composer who lived a long time ago. I think he loved the sound of water, too." Over the next few days, they always included some classical music in their visits to the garden. Jason introduced Lily to his love of music, something he rarely shared. She, in turn, pointed out details in the garden he had never noticed. The way a certain flower opened only in late afternoon, the route the ants always followed, the pattern of shadows on the ground. Evenings brought another routine, reading before bed. It began with Emily, who passed by the yellow room to say goodnight and found Lily flipping through a picture book. "Do you like stories?" Emily asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Lily nodded. "My mum used to read to me every night, even when she was tired." Emily smiled softly. "I can read to you if you like." And so, their bedtime ritual began. Emily started with fairy tales, but soon learned Lily preferred adventure stories and mysteries. Over time, Jason also joined, sometimes just listening from the doorway, other times taking a seat in the room. One evening, when Emily had to go out, Jason took on the reading duty himself. He seemed visibly nervous, as though about to give an important presentation. "Aunt Emily always does different voices for the characters," Lily noted, watching him open the book. "I'm not very good at voices," Jason admitted, feeling oddly vulnerable. "That's okay," Lily said, surprising him with her understanding. "You can read your own way." So Jason read in his own way. His deep, steady voice gave a new dimension to the story, less dramatic but equally engaging. When he finished the chapter, he found Lily watching him with a curious expression. "What is it?" he asked. "You read like my teacher at school," she replied. "Serious, but interesting." Jason felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest at the simple, sincere compliment, the kind of honesty only a child offers. Thus, between silent breakfasts, strolls in the garden, and bedtime readings, days turned into weeks. Affection grew in small gestures, Jason learning how to help Lily in and out of her wheelchair without her having to ask, Emily discovering exactly how Lily liked her hair braided, Lily leaving drawings on Jason's desk or a garden flower on Emily's nightstand. They were shared silences, wordless conversations, a language of their own that the three were learning together. Emily quickly became Aunt Emily, a title bestowed with love and trust. Jason, however, remained Mr. Jason, or simply Sir, a subtle barrier Lily wasn't yet ready to lower. Not that Jason minded, or so he told himself. He understood Lily's hesitation, respecting her need for time. Still, there were moments, especially during their quiet morning coffees, when he secretly wished to hear his name spoken with the same warmth and familiarity she gave Emily. One morning, as they watched the sunrise together, Lily asked a question that caught him off guard. "Do you have a family, sir, besides Aunt Emily? I mean..." Jason set his coffee cup down. "I do have parents. They live far away now. And a younger brother. Do you see them much?" "Not as often as we should," Jason admitted. "We're all so busy." Lily was silent a moment, absorbing that information. "Family is important," she finally said, her voice so soft Jason almost didn't hear. "Even when they're not close." There was something about the simplicity of that observation that touched Jason deeply, a wisdom beyond her years, born perhaps from early loss. "Yes," he agreed, his own voice a bit rough. "Family is important." What Jason didn't say, what he couldn't voice in that moment, was how this simple routine with Lily, silent breakfasts, walks in the garden, bedtime stories, was filling a void in his life he never knew existed. How her small gestures and words were, day by day, teaching him what truly mattered. Lily, for her part, felt at a strange crossroads. Jason and Emily's home was comfortable and safe, filled with care she had almost forgotten existed. Emily was open and warm, easy to love. Jason was quieter, with a gentle kindness that reminded her of her mom in some ways. Yet part of Lily, the part that had learned the hard way to survive on the streets, remained watchful, not fully allowing herself to belong. She called Emily Aunt, but still addressed Jason with Sir. She kept a small backpack of essentials hidden under her mattress, ready to leave if necessary, because Lily knew better than anyone that family could be lost in the blink of an eye. And though this new family seemed welcoming, it still didn't feel entirely real, like a pleasant dream she feared would end the moment she opened her eyes. Autumn wore on, bringing colder winds and persistent rain. The trees in the building's garden lost their leaves, and the sky stayed grey for days at a time. Inside the apartment, however, life continued its quiet dance. Breakfasts with Jason, afternoons drawing with Emily, bedtime stories in the evening. On one of those grey mornings, Jason noticed something off about Lily. She arrived in the kitchen later than usual, her eyes lacking their usual sparkle, her cheeks strangely flushed. "Good morning," he greeted, placing her starry mug in front of her, already filled with warm milk. "Good morning, sir," Lily replied, her voice weaker than normal. Jason watched her closely as she sipped her milk in small gulps. There was a sluggishness in her movements, a heaviness in her eyelids that didn't match the lively child he'd grown used to. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked, trying to sound casual so as not to alarm her. Lily nodded, but the gesture seemed to cost her effort. "Just a little tired." The day proceeded. Jason went to work, but his mind refused to focus. He couldn't shake the image of Lily looking pale and subdued at the breakfast table. He called Emily mid-morning, just to check. She assured him Lily was resting in the yellow room, probably just needing a quiet morning. Yet when he returned late in the afternoon, Emily met him in the living room with a worried face. "What happened?" he asked immediately. "It's Lily," Emily said, tension in her voice. "I think she's sick. She has a fever." Jason felt a jolt of panic, a sense of helplessness completely unlike his usual composure. "How high?" 101.3 degrees, last time I checked. I gave her some medicine, but it doesn't seem to be helping." Without waiting for more details, Jason headed for the yellow room. Lily lay in the bed, her small figure barely visible under the blankets. Her dark hair clung to her sweaty forehead, and her cheeks were even redder than that morning. Clara, the doll, was clutched tightly to her chest. "Hey," Jason said gently, sitting on the edge of the bed. Lily opened her eyes with difficulty. "Hi, sir," she croaked, her voice raspy. "I'm not feeling so good." "I know," he replied softly, pressing the back of his hand to her forehead. It felt alarmingly hot. "We're going to take care of you, okay?" She nodded weakly, eyes fluttering shut again. Panic swelled in Jason like a wave. He called Emily, and together they decided to contact the family doctor. The wait felt interminable, every minute testing Jason's patience. Accustomed to having control over everything, he felt powerless before the child's fever. The doctor arrived an hour later. He examined Lily carefully, speaking softly so as not to distress her. She answered in tired monosyllables. The diagnosis was a severe flu, likely worsened by Lily's low immunity from years of inadequate nutrition and harsh living conditions. "She needs rest, fluids, and medication to bring the fever down," the doctor explained, prescribing some treatments. "If the fever doesn't drop in 24 hours or goes above 102 degrees Celsius, take her to the hospital." After the doctor left, Emily went to the pharmacy to get the medications. Jason stayed behind with Lily, sitting in the armchair next to her bed, watching her toss and turn in fitful sleep. Seeing her so small and vulnerable in that big bed triggered memories Jason had long buried. He recalled himself at 8, lying alone in a hospital bed, feverish from untreated tonsillitis. His mother should have been there, but she wasn't. She never was when he needed her most. His last memory of her was a brief conversation at the front door, her suitcase already packed in the car, saying she needed to find herself, that she loved Jason and his younger brother but couldn't stay in that house, in that marriage, that she'd be back to visit. She never returned. Jason's father, a practical, reserved man, never discussed her departure. He hired a nanny, rearranged his work schedule, and carried on as if the void left by her absence could be filled with routines and responsibilities. Jason grew up learning not to trust, not to attach, not to expect. He built a life of success around self-reliance and control. He married Emily because she was independent and strong, not demanding more than he could give. They never had children, partly because Jason secretly feared repeating the abandonment he'd suffered. And now here he was, watching over the feverish sleep of a child who had somehow found a crack in his carefully built walls. "Mom," Lily mumbled, twisting in her restless sleep. "Mom, I'm cold." Without thinking, Jason tucked the blankets more securely around her, gently brushing her hair aside. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here." Lily's eyes opened for a moment, glassy with fever. "You're not going anywhere." The question struck Jason like a punch to the gut, echoing his own childhood fears. "No," he managed, his voice thick. "I'm not going anywhere." Lily fell back to sleep, but Jason remained there, holding her small, feverish hand, battling his own panic and the sense of inadequacy that loomed whenever he thought about caring for someone else. Emily returned with the prescribed medication, and together they attended to Lily, trading off cold compresses, dosing her medicine, helping her sip water in her semi-conscious state. As night deepened, the fever ebbed and flowed, rising and falling like waves on a stormy sea. Around midnight, Emily insisted Jason go rest, assuring him she would keep watch. He refused. "I can't leave her," he said simply. Emily touched his shoulder gently. "She'll be all right, Jason. Kids get sick. It happens. What if she gets worse? What if we need to take her to the hospital? Then we will. Together." Jason ran a tired hand over his face. The fear he felt was irrational. He knew that. It was disproportionate to a flu, no matter how severe. But it was real and crushing. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," he admitted in a low voice. "To be what she needs." Emily sat beside him, her hands finding his in the darkness. "No one's asking you to be perfect, Jason, just to be here." The silence that followed was thick, laden with unspoken emotion. Finally, Jason spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "I'm afraid I don't know how to love her the way she deserves, like a father should." The word father came out shaky, almost painful. "I never had an example. My mother left. My father, well, he stayed, but he was never really there, if you know what I mean." Emily squeezed his hand. "Love isn't something you have to learn somewhere before practicing, Jason. It's something you build, day by day, in small moments, in the quiet breakfasts you share, in the bedtime stories, in the worry you feel right now." Jason closed his eyes, letting her words settle into his heart. When he opened them again, he saw Lily was awake, her fever-bright eyes watching him. "How long have you been awake?" he asked gently. "A little while," she answered, voice weak. "Mr. Jason?" "Yes, Lily." "My mom said love means choosing to stay, even when it's hard." She paused, breathing with difficulty. "You chose to stay with me tonight." Jason felt something wet on his cheeks and realized, stunned, that he was crying. He couldn't recall the last time he'd cried. "Yes," he said, his voice trembling, "I chose to stay." "Then you already know how to love," Lily concluded with the simple, devastating logic only children possess. Emily smiled through tears of her own. "She's right, you know." Jason couldn't respond. He just nodded, gently touching Lily's hot cheek, feeling the weight of that moment, of the simple truth he had just learned from a feverish child. The storm outside raged on, rain and wind lashing at the windows. But inside the yellow room, among these three people, something new was taking root, something fragile and strong at the same time, the way only true love can be. The fever finally broke. After 3 days of worry, cool compresses, and meticulously timed medicine doses, Lily woke one morning with her cheeks back to normal and a livelier look in her eyes. The storm, both outside and within her, had subsided. Emily insisted she stay in bed one more day just to be sure. She brought breakfast on a tray. Toast, scrambled eggs, orange juice, and fluffed the pillows so Lily could sit up comfortably. "I'm bored," Lily declared once she finished her breakfast. "Can I do something?" Emily smiled, relieved to see the return of the girl's energy. "What would you like to do?" "Draw," Lily replied promptly. "Could you bring me paper and colored pencils?" Emily obliged, handing over a new box of colored pencils and a pad of blank paper. Lily thanked her, her eyes shining at the bright array of colors, so many she hardly knew where to begin. "I'll leave you to concentrate," Emily said, kissing the top of Lily's head. "Call me if you need anything." Alone in the room, Lily spread out the pencils on the bed and began working, her small brow furrowed in concentration. Her fingers moved carefully across the page, choosing colors, sketching lines, creating her own small world with each stroke. She worked for hours, pausing only for water or to rest her fingers. When Emily brought lunch, Lily quickly flipped the paper face down, hiding her work. "It's a surprise," she explained with a mysterious smile. That afternoon, Jason returned from work earlier than usual. He'd only worked a half day, eager to see how Lily was doing. Over the past few days, his worry about her health had overshadowed every other priority. Meetings were postponed, projects delegated, decisions delayed. "How's our patient?" he asked Emily, finding her in the kitchen. "Much better," Emily replied with a smile. "No fever, good appetite, and she's been busy on some secret project all morning." Jason felt a wave of relief. Lily's illness had been more stressful for him than any business crisis he'd ever faced. "Can I see her?" "Of course, but knock first. She's very focused on that mystery project." Jason walked to the yellow room and tapped lightly. "Lily, can I come in?" "Just a minute," came her hurried reply, followed by the sounds of rustling papers and drawers opening and closing. After a few moments, Lily called, "Okay, come in now." Jason opened the door, finding Lily sitting on the bed, her cheeks flushed with excitement rather than fever. She seemed to have hidden something quickly behind her. "Hey," he said, smiling at how healthy she looked. "Heard you're feeling better." Lily nodded vigorously. "Much better. Not a bit of fever." "I'm so glad to hear that." Jason took a seat in the armchair beside the bed. Emily said you're working on a secret project. Lily's smile widened. I finished it. It's for both of you, but I want to show it at dinner. Jason felt an uncommon curiosity swell in him, so unlike his normally reserved self. I can't wait to see it. The rest of the afternoon passed in quiet anticipation. Lily insisted she had a few final touches to complete, so Jason and Emily stayed busy elsewhere in the apartment, respecting her space. At dinner time, they gathered in the dining room. The table was set with a bit more care than usual. Emily had prepared Lily's favorite dish to celebrate her recovery. Before we start, Lily said, her small voice calm but resolute, I want to show you something. She slid off her chair and maneuvered her wheelchair toward her room, returning moments later with something hidden behind her back. She stopped between Jason and Emily, took a deep breath as if preparing for a big jump, and revealed what she'd been hiding, a colorful drawing on a large sheet of paper. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands in front of a tall building clearly meant to be their apartment. The middle figure was small, seated in a wheelchair, obviously Lily. On her right was a woman with brown hair and a big smile, Emily. On her left, a tall man in a suit, Jason. Above the figures, in bright, uneven letters, it read, My family. It's to put on my bedroom door, Lily explained, so everyone knows it's a family's room. Jason felt something break inside him, some final barrier that had persisted. Emily, beside him, already had tears brimming in her eyes. It's beautiful, Lily, she said, her voice trembling. Lily smiled, but there was a nervousness in her eyes, as though she were about to take a huge leap. She turned to Jason, meeting his eyes with surprising determination. Did you like it, Dad? The word hung in the air, small yet powerful, laden with meaning and hope. Jason couldn't answer right away. Something had lodged in his throat, blocking any sound. His eyes burned, blurred by tears he hadn't shed in decades. Then, wordlessly, he knelt to Lily's level and hugged her, gently, almost reverently, as though holding something infinitely precious and fragile. I loved it, he managed at last, his voice ragged with emotion. It's the most beautiful picture I've ever seen. Lily returned the hug, her small arms around Jason's neck. So I can really call you Dad? And Aunt Emily Mom? You can, he said, feeling as though every wall he'd built around his heart over the years had come tumbling down with that single word. Nothing would make me happier. That night, before Lily went to bed, exhausted from the day's excitement, Jason and Emily taped the drawing to the door of the yellow room. Lily watched from the bed, her face lit by a smile more valuable than all the fortunes and corporations in the world. Now, she said contentedly, it's a real room, for a real family. The decision wasn't sudden. It had been forming day by day, breakfast by breakfast, story by story. But the moment Lily called Jason Dad for the first time was the final catalyst, the instant when a possibility became a certainty. The next morning, while Lily was still sleeping, Jason and Emily sat at the kitchen table, their coffees forgotten between their hands. I want to make it official, Jason said without preamble. I want to start the adoption process. Emily reached for his hand across the table. She wasn't surprised. Deep down, she'd known this was coming. I want that too. It'll be complicated, Jason continued, still the pragmatist, even when his heart was fully engaged. We don't know anything about her legal status. There are no documents. We don't know if there are other relatives. We'll find a way, Emily replied with the calm confidence that always balanced Jason's worries. We have resources, we know people, and most of all, we have Lily. They decided not to say anything to Lily until they had more information. They didn't want to raise hopes prematurely. But that same afternoon, Jason cancelled all his appointments and, with Emily, drove to the city's main records office. The building was old, with marble-lined halls and employees who seemed as permanent as the columns holding up the ceiling. They were directed to the adoption section, where a middle-aged clerk with thick-framed glasses and her hair in a tight bun listened to their story. Complicated case, she commented, after hearing the brief version Jason and Emily provided. A child with no formal documentation, living on the streets, no legal guardians. We'll have quite a few steps to complete before we can start formal adoption. Jason nodded, ready for whatever bureaucracy awaited. What's the first step? Locate the child's birth certificate, if it exists. Then check for records of the mother's death. See if there are other relatives with legal rights, if there's been any previous involvement from social services. Emily felt her stomach clench. So many ifs, so many potential complications. But she was determined. We have her name, Lily, and she told us her mother passed away a few years ago. The clerk adjusted her glasses. I'll need the girl's full name, the mother's name, approximate dates, places they lived, any detail you can provide. Jason and Emily exchanged looks, painfully aware of how little they truly knew about Lily's life before they found her. In the quiet moments of their daily routines, at mealtimes or bedtime, Lily had shared fragments, but nothing that could give them a clear picture for legal paperwork. We'll have to ask her, Jason concluded, carefully, without pushing. They left the records office with a list of required documents and the information they needed to collect. That evening after dinner, while the three of them were in the living room watching a movie, Emily seized a quiet moment to bring it up. Lily, she began, keeping her tone casual, we were thinking, we'd love to know more about you, about your life before we met. Lily turned to her, her face lit by the TV's soft glow. Why? Jason joined in gently, choosing his words. Because you matter to us, and also because we're thinking about making this family official, legally. Lily's eyes widened with understanding. You mean adoption, like in the books? Emily smiled, touched by the reference to the stories she'd read to Lily, which often included adoptive families. Yes, just like in the books. Lily was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, with a gravity beyond her years, she began to talk. She told them about her mother, Caroline Matthews, who worked as a nurse at a small hospital, how they lived in a modest apartment on the city's east side, about the accident that killed her mother and left Lily in a wheelchair. After that, I stayed with Mrs. Peters, our neighbor, but she was old and often sick. One day, she just didn't wake up. Lily related it all calmly, like reciting someone else's story. That's when I ended up on the streets. Nobody wanted a kid who couldn't walk. Jason and Emily listened with aching hearts, asking gentle questions and noting details that might help in the legal process. The next morning, they returned to the records office, armed with more concrete information. The clerk with the thick glasses typed quickly into an old computer, her fingers moving nimbly over the keyboard. Let's see. Matthews, Caroline, small municipal hospital, she muttered as she navigated the system. Ah, here we are. Caroline Elizabeth Matthews, registered nurse. Deceased 3 years ago in a traffic accident. The official confirmation of Lily's story brought a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness at the finality of her mother's fate, relief that they were on the right track. And the child, the clerk continued, opening another file. Lily Hope Matthews, born April 15th, 8 years ago. No father listed. No other relatives in the system. Emily watched the computer screen, trying to absorb the details of Lily's life before them. Then something caught her eye. Wait, she said, leaning forward. Could you repeat the mother's full name? Caroline Elizabeth Matthews, the clerk replied, adjusting her glasses. Emily paled, her hand instinctively seeking Jason's. It can't be, she whispered. What is it? Jason asked, alarmed. Caroline Elizabeth Matthews, Emily repeated, her voice unsteady. Lena. That's what we used to call her. She was my best friend growing up. Both Jason and the clerk looked at her in surprise. We grew up together on the same street, Emily went on, words tumbling out now. We were inseparable from age 8 to 18. Then I went to college out of state. She stayed behind, started nursing school. Emily closed her eyes, memories flooding back. For the first few years, we wrote letters, called each other, then life happened. I met you, Jason, we moved, we lost touch. Jason squeezed her hand. Are you sure it's the same person? Emily nodded slowly. It's too much of a coincidence. Caroline Elizabeth Matthews, nurse. The age fits. And Lily, her voice cracked. Lily has the same eyes as her. How did I not see it before? The rest of the records process felt like a blur for Emily. Jason took charge, gathering the necessary documents, signing forms, setting up the next steps. Emily could only replay fragments of her past, summer afternoons with Caroline, secrets shared in teenage bedrooms, promises of eternal friendship that life had swallowed up. On the drive home, Emily stared out the window, not really seeing the passing scenery. "You're thinking about her," Jason remarked, more statement than question. "About how strange life is," Emily replied. "I went years without thinking about her, with no idea what had happened, and all this time she was here in the same city, raising a daughter, dying." Her voice broke on the last word. "And now, by some impossible twist, her daughter found her way to us." Jason drove in silence, processing it all. "What will you tell Lily?" "The truth," Emily answered without hesitation, "that her mother was my best friend. That, in some way, fate brought us back together. That maybe it wasn't an accident she found you that night outside that store. When they got home, Lily was in the living room, drawing. She looked up at them, immediately sensing something had changed. "What happened?" she asked, setting her pencil aside. Emily sat beside her, heart pounding. "Lily, we found out something incredible today." In simple words, Emily described her friendship with Caroline, how they'd been like sisters growing up, how college and life separated them, how they had loved each other through their teenage years and shared every dream. She spoke of summer days running through fields, secrets whispered under flashlight beams after bedtime, dreams and plans for the future. "Your mom was the bravest person I ever knew," Emily said, tears sliding freely down her cheeks. "She always knew how to make me laugh when I was sad. She always stood up for those who needed help." "I'm not surprised she became a nurse." Lily listened, her expression awed, as if receiving a precious gift. "You really knew my mom, when she was young?" Emily nodded, wiping her tears. "And seeing you now, I realize how much of her is in you. The same eyes, the same smile, the same courage." For a moment, no one spoke. The silence in the living room was charged with emotion. Not sadness, but a sense of completeness, as if pieces of a puzzle had finally found their place. "Do you think," Lily asked softly, her voice trembling with held-back emotion, "my mom would be happy that I'm here with you?" Emily didn't hesitate. She opened her arms, and Lily leaned in, returning the embrace. "Absolutely," she murmured, holding the daughter of her best friend, the child who had, by some miracle, come to be her daughter too. "She always wanted the best for you, and somehow I think she helped lead you to us." Jason watched them hugging, feeling part of something bigger than himself, bigger than his fears or insecurities. The adoption process, once just a legal procedure in his mind, now carried a far deeper meaning. It wasn't just about forming a new family, it was about honoring bonds that had existed even before Lily was born, bonds not even death had severed. "So my mom chose you to look after me," Lily whispered, echoing the thought Emily had just had. "Yes," Emily said, hugging her tighter. "I believe she did." The days following that discovery at the records office brought a new energy to the apartment. It was as though a golden thread had been woven into the tapestry of this emerging family, a thread that connected past and present. Every morning, Emily woke with memories of Caroline resurfacing. Snippets of conversations, shared laughter, whispered secrets. Memories long dormant now returned in vivid detail. "I need to find something," she told Jason during breakfast, 3 days after the revelation. "I'm sure I kept some things from that time." Jason nodded, understanding her need to reconnect with that past now so intertwined with their present. "In the building storage room or your parents' attic?" "In the storage room," Emily decided. "When we moved here, I brought a few boxes from my parents' place, things from my childhood and teen years. That afternoon, while Lily had her first physical therapy session, a gift from Jason, who hired the best specialist in town for weekly home evaluations, Emily and Jason headed to the apartment building's basement storage. The space was a maze of stacked boxes, covered furniture, and items people couldn't use but couldn't part with either. In a far corner, Emily located the boxes labeled with her name. "It's all jumbled," she explained, opening the first. "My parents packed it when they moved to Florida, and I never bothered to organize properly." Together, they sorted through the contents: scrapbooks, old magazines, school notebooks scribbled with adolescent handwriting, small trophies from school competitions. In a smaller box, Emily found a collection of letters, handwritten notes, birthday cards, intricately folded messages like only teenagers can make. "Here," she said, holding up a faded envelope. "That's Caroline's handwriting." Jason watched as Emily carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a multi-page letter written in round, clear handwriting, with doodles in the margins. Emily read it silently, tears gathering in her eyes. "She wrote this when I went to college," she explained, her voice trembling. "She said she missed me, that the city felt empty without me, promising our friendship would survive the distance." They continued rummaging, unearthing fragments of a past now given new meaning. Eventually, amid yellowed papers and time-worn envelopes, Emily found something she hadn't realized she was looking for: a photograph. Her hands shook as she picked it up. In it, two girls about 12 years old smiled with arms around each other in a park. One girl was clearly Emily, hair short and wearing a light-colored dress, her round, freckled face free of the braces she'd get later. The other was slightly taller, with dark hair and bright eyes that smiled as much as her lips. Caroline. "Oh my God," Emily whispered, her fingertips tracing Caroline's face. "How didn't I see it sooner?" Lily is the spitting image of her at this age. Jason peered over her shoulder. Even he, who had never met Caroline, could see the resemblance between mother and daughter. The same expressive eyes, the same face shape, the same quietly radiant smile. "This was taken the summer before 7th grade, Emily recalled, lost in memory. "At the Central Park Music Festival. We spent the whole day dancing, eating cotton candy, making plans for the future." Jason wrapped his arms around her from behind, sensing her emotion. "You should show Lily." "I will." Today, when Lily returned from physical therapy, tired but excited about the new exercises to strengthen her arms, Emily was waiting in the living room, the photograph cleaned and placed in a simple frame. "I have something to show you," she said, sitting next to Lily on the couch. Lily looked curiously at the frame Emily held. When she saw the picture, her eyes went wide. She gently took the frame, studying every detail as if looking at treasure newly unearthed. She stared at it for long moments, saying nothing. Finally, she smiled, a small, warm smile reminiscent of the girl in the photo. "That was my mom, and you, when you were kids." The simplicity of that statement, Lily's immediate understanding of who was in the picture, the connection it represented, stirred Emily's heart deeply. Tears slipped down her cheeks again, but she didn't hide them. "Yes," she confirmed softly. "We were about your age there." "She looks happy," Lily observed, touching her mother's face. "She was," Emily said through her tears, "especially that day. I remember we danced until our feet hurt, ate so much cotton candy we felt sick and still didn't want to leave." Jason, watching from the living room doorway, stepped forward and sat in an armchair facing them. There was something sacred about that moment, a bridging of generations, a connection transcending time and even death. "I want to put it in my room," Lily decided, still holding the photo carefully. "Is that okay?" "Of course," Emily agreed. "I was thinking we could look for more pictures. I'm sure there are others somewhere." Over the following days, Emily and Lily undertook a journey into the past. They sorted through boxes, flipped through albums, read old letters, each new find, a photograph, a note written by Caroline, a faded friendship bracelet, felt like a tiny miracle, relinking a chain that had never truly been broken, only paused. Jason observed and sometimes took part, always awed by the power of that bond. For him, who had grown up in a family where outward affection was rare and emotional ties seemed fragile, the relationship between Emily and Lily, reinforced by the memory of Caroline, was eye-opening. The found photograph took pride of place in the yellow room. Emily had a special frame made, light wood with small floral carvings. and Lily chose the perfect spot on the bedside table, where she could see it both at dawn and before sleeping. "So my mom and you can always be with me," she explained, with the straightforward logic of a child. Weeks turned into months. The adoption process moved forward with its bureaucratic challenges. Visits from social workers, evaluations upon evaluations. Yet at every step, their conviction grew. They belonged together, not by accident, but through a confluence of choices, coincidences, and perhaps some higher power none of them could name. Lily started attending a specialized school, quickly making friends. Her yellow room gained new drawings on the walls, new books on the shelves, new stories to tell. Aunt and Sir were definitively replaced by Mom and Dad, words rolling more naturally off her tongue each day, as though she had always been meant to say them. 6 months after the discovery at the records office, on a spring afternoon, the process was finally complete. Lily Hope Matthews officially became Lily Hope Matthews Miller. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, exhausted from the day's celebrations, Jason and Emily sat on the balcony, gazing at the city lights below. "I never imagined my life going this way," Jason confessed, holding Emily's hand. "Constructing buildings, closing deals, amassing wealth, that was always my plan. But a family, a daughter." He shook his head, still amazed at the path life had taken. "It's funny how our biggest projects aren't always the ones we plan." Emily squeezed his hand, understanding perfectly. "The most important legacy we leave isn't made of steel or glass, is it? It's made of these moments, these connections, this love." Jason nodded, feeling a peace he hadn't known before. His greatest construction, his most important project, wasn't in the skyscrapers bearing his name, but right here in this apartment. A family built not with cement and steel, but with shared breakfasts, bedtime stories, old photographs, and new beginnings. It was a structure invisible from across the city, never to be featured in architecture magazines or business headlines. Yet he knew it would endure in a way none of his other ventures ever could. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.